Hi there, welcome back. I'm Melody Bacon.
You are Dr. Melody
I
Bacon to
am.
everybody else, and I am Ron Bacon. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist,
Correct.
and we're happy to present some of these topics that are familiar to you,
Mm-hmm.
but being able to give some clues as how to not have the same old argument.
That goes nowhere.
Yes,
We've all had them.
yes.
So, conflict is something that probably is the most prominent issue that we deal with in our practice and that people just deal with in general, particularly when they're in meaningful, important relationships. The irony is that the more important a relationship is to you, the harder it is to have conflict. And yet, the most important part of your relationship will be how you manage conflict effectively. And some people manage by not having it. And we've both seen in our practice where we work a lot with couples is that after 10 plus years, they've grown way apart and they can't talk about anything else. And now you're looking at getting a divorce and trying
Right.
with somebody else. But the problem is you start all over with the same ability to manage conflict, which is not to have it, and you end up with a second divorce quicker than the first time around. So we want to help you avoid that outcome if you're married, an outcome where you're having problems with your children or your parents or your siblings because of the conflict management. So last time we talked about conflict, we enumerated a few points. One was to settle your brain down by deep breathing, taking time before you bring up a topic, and having a plan of some sort. Secondly, getting curious about what your partner's thinking is, opening with a line like, what do you see happening? What would you like to see happening? That you keep in mind the goal is to understand each other, not to solve a problem, and certainly not to come at it with a winner or a loser, but both of us moving forward on the same team. And that you be aware that some of these topics might be too difficult to have all at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, when you feel yourself getting anxious, frustrated, upset, you're just, overwhelmed, that's a good time to take a break and come back another day when your brain is a little bit more settled. So those were, I think, the main
Mm-hmm.
points we made.
Mm-hmm. And then in this video, we want to make some new points
Mm-hmm.
and to build on top of that. And
Right.
one, from a man's perspective, there's a couple things. One, he may think, my wife is always bringing up these issues.
True.
Why does she always bring these up? I don't bring up issues like this.
Yeah.
And guess what? The research is very clear is that women do bring
Mm-hmm.
up the issues 80% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's in satisfied and in dissatisfied relationships equally. She has the lion's share of the pain of the relationship, and so she brings it up.
She's going to notice an issue much more likely
Mm-hmm.
before her spouse or partner does, and conversely, from the female view, to not be upset because your husband doesn't ever bring up an issue, which I've heard that. I'm always the one bringing it
Mm-hmm.
up. He doesn't think there's a
Mm-hmm.
problem.
It's an overstatement because men do bring up an issue 20% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that 20%, you may want to weight it a little
Right.
bit more. It may be a little more important. Who knows? But for the research, if he is ignoring it or dismissing it,
Mm-hmm.
minimizing it, that we also know that women file for divorce at about the same rate,
Right.
just a little less than that, 70 to 75% of the time.
Yes.
But it's certainly not anywhere near 50%. And
Yes.
so to not just say, roll your eyes, show contempt, all that kind of stuff, trying to
Right.
get her to back down, to say, how will this benefit our relationship? Is there something in this that there's a nugget of gold in it, a kernel of truth that is, that if she's waited too long, she may say it in ways that are too strong or maybe attacking on you, the person. And your job is to continue thinking we're a team. And I love this woman who right now is slightly out of her mind.
Right.
Saying that is not going to help. Don't say that.
Yes.
But you think it, and then it's like, how do I go about not losing my mind just because she lost hers?
Right.
How do I do this? It doesn't help me to start yelling at her or saying, you brought up this, you never let things
Yes.
go, and making it a personal attack.
Yeah.
So what is she saying? How long has she been thinking this is not a
Right.
bad question. And if you can ask a good question, it can get any person out of that emotional response and into a thoughtful response.
Yeah, that gets back to the curiosity
Mhm.
component of being
Yes.
curious about your partner's thinking. What are they observing? What are they seeing? That you don't run with the I'm okay. If you have a problem, it's your problem. Because if she has a problem or your partner has a problem and you have a problem,
Mhm.
as a team, you have a problem. I don't believe you would say that with a work partner. Maybe
Right.
you would, but most people do this much better at work than they do at home. And some of the skills that you use at work are good to translate into your personal relationship. But one of the things we want to talk about as well, and you're alluding to it in your example, which is what is your position about this topic? What is your position about arguing? You know, as opposed to conflict. You know, if you take the position, I'm not going to argue, doesn't mean you're not going to talk about it. And you're not going to have a conflict, but you're not going to argue. And then what would my partner likely do that might pull me into an argument, or that I might pull myself into the argument? Again, not to tell your partner to stop doing that, you know, quit making me mad is not useful, but to say, wow, how is it that I'm not able to regulate myself because my partner is dismissing me or telling me that I'm crazy because I'm seeing something that they aren't? And how can I respond differently? For example, if your partner says something like, I don't know what your problem is, you're always bringing something up, your response could be, well, how would you know if I'm always bringing up something? Are you saying that I'm bringing things up that are inconsequential? And you know, what's really your point? Do you think that I'm kind of sitting here waiting to dig at you with some kind of a criticism? All of those could be useful responses. I've worked with couples that is what indeed they do think, that their partner is not bringing up issues out of any concern for them or their relationship, but they really have some kind of underlying desire to create criticism and conflict.
Yeah. Do you think this is the same issue or is this a different one? You know, and if one person thinks it's a different one person thinks it's the same one, that's curious. That's all.
Yeah, and so you get in touch with your values. If your value is not to have arguments and you keep having them, you're transgressing your own values.
Right.
It doesn't matter if your partner thinks it's fine to argue. And I mean arguing, which is, you know, name calling, taking somebody's inventory. I don't mean conflict where I'm not agreeing with you, I don't see what you're saying. That's legitimate. Arguing is, well, you know, the last time you didn't take out the trash, and then the other partner says, oh yeah, well what about the time you didn't pick up my dry cleaning? Those are arguments. And by the way, you're lazy and thoughtless, because if you really loved me, you would have done it. That's an argument. This is not useful. It doesn't help you reach some kind of understanding of one another, and that is where people descend, which is why they think that's conflict and they want to avoid it. I agree, you should avoid those kinds of interchanges.
Yeah, it is conflict, but it's hitting below the belt. It's attacking the person rather than the problem. And so one thing that we referenced John Gottman's work in the last video, and to again build on that, he talks about a harsh startup as something to avoid, and you know that you can, and then also to be noticing repair attempts. If you see your partner, when you bring something up, you're wanting to improve the relationship, and they're backpedaling. You know, again, do you think I'm attacking you? Yeah, I feel attacked. Well, let's talk about the problem, and maybe even physically coming alongside the person and putting the problem out in front of both of you to be able to talk. Let's talk about this. It has come up more than once, and let's see if we can find a solution
Yeah,
to this.
we have a problem. It's
Mhm.
not you and it's not me, but we have
Mhm.
one. And so Gottman enumerates a couple of
Mhm.
things. One you alluded to was a harsh startup, which females are more likely to do, and that is along the lines of the husband comes in the door and
What
she's,
took you so long to
right.
get home if she
Why
has kids?
didn't you come
Yeah.
in when you said you were? That's a harsh startup.
Mhm.
Okay. The non-harsh startup would be you've had dinner and hey honey, I have something I'd like to talk about. Is this a good time? Now let's say the husband says no. Well, when would be a good time?
Mhm.
Never. Okay, that's not an option. Would tomorrow evening be okay? No. Okay. Well, here are the times that I will bring up the
Mhm.
topic.
Mhm.
Since you're not giving me any options, I'll bring it up tomorrow at 6 and we'll see what we can do. That would be that's a worst case scenario. Most people will say okay. Now here's a caveat. A lot of men will tell me that when they hear the words we need to talk, this is the bell for an hours long discussion of everything that has ever happened in their relationship. This is not a good idea. And so one of the things we really recommend is that you cut short, you give a timetable, like 10 minutes for a talk. And if you're still going back and forth, you take a break and talk again the next day. I will tell you that is the most difficult single advice I will give to people, because your brain, when you're in the middle of that, doesn't want to disengage. It's almost as if there's this carrot saying, oh, if we just spend a few more minutes, we'll get done with it. The problem is when you're there, any more time spent is going to be down the tubes, because your brain has already jumped the shark.
It's too defended to have that
you're not going to
discussion.
hear anything. Your partner's not going to hear anything.
Yeah.
More time is going to be a waste, and it's going to likely be detrimental.
One technique is to do a 10 and 10. So to spend both
Yeah.
people, sit down with some paper,
Right.
write for 10 minutes. Here's our topic.
Yep.
You can even do it in the form of a sentence stem. When you do blank, I feel another blank, and to put it down. Or this issue keeps coming up, and these are my thoughts about, and
Yes.
put it in there. Write for 10 minutes, then you trade papers, read once for the head, once for the heart, and then you can have that discussion then, or table it and say, let's meet again tomorrow and talk about what we just learned.
It's a great idea.
You know,
And
so-
writing can help you think through what you're saying, and your partner can receive it better without all the emotional, kind of activation. So harsh startup you want to avoid. You want to avoid contempt, which is the eye rolling. The somebody will say, well, I'd really like to work this out, and the other one says, oh yeah, right. That's a good one. Okay, that's contempt. That's off the table. There's never any room for that. The other point Gottman makes is you want to have a criticism, not a. You don't want to have criticism. You want to have a complaint. So a criticism would be attacking somebody's character. You're lazy. You're thoughtless. A complaint is you didn't take the trash out on Tuesday when you said you would, and I'm frustrated because now we have too much trash in our trash can. That's a complaint. It's about a behavior. It's not inferring anything negative about the partner. And then finally, the stonewalling, which men tend to do more, which is to pretend like they're listening when they're not, and just wait until the storm blows over and nothing has gotten accomplished. So an antidote to stonewalling would be some of the things you suggested. So how long have you had these thoughts? Asking some good questions. Or at the very least saying to your partner, you know what, I want to listen to you, but I'm overwhelmed, flooded. My brain is offline. Even if the partner says, well, you should be able to listen to me, you never want to listen, blah, 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 you could still say, well, that may be the case, but right now I'm not available. How about if we try this again tomorrow evening? Or
Could you write it?
Write it for me, and I'll write down.
Yeah.
So those are the four things I think if you keep in mind. You can read it more comprehensively in John Gottman's book, Gottman. He's easily available on Amazon or any of your booksellers. But that would be, you want to get rid of the harsh startup and negotiate for a time when you can talk. You want to set a limit when you do talk if it's a particularly important topic. And then you want to avoid contempt. That has to be off the table. You want to complain about behavior, not criticizing a person's character. And you don't want to stonewall and just wait for somebody to be done. You really want to engage with them in some way.
And to be aware of defensiveness, that when your partner's defensive, they're not capable of hearing you.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
And don't point it out to your partner.
Right. Just know, would it be all right with you if we table this for now?
Yeah. Don't tell your partner you're being defensive. You need to knock it off. This is not a good idea. But be aware of your own defensiveness.
Yes.
And if your partner isn't in a position to hear you, let's table it. What else could we do this evening? I'd like to have a nice evening with you. If they aren't able to manage that, well, I'll watch TV, or you let me know.
Yeah.
I'm available. But I want to keep going. Yes, you do. I'm not available for that right now, but I do want to be with you. So those are some tips, and we'll keep going. This is a big topic. Books have been written about it.
Oh, many.
But hopefully those will help you as we move forward with our series on conflict management. Okay, good.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that'll be good for now, and we can keep going with. I think it's a good topic, and it's just a million things to do. So I'll go ahead and